better, John. It'll work.
All right.
All the meeting board. Okay, we will defer 2 through 5 for Wednesday. We have nothing under public comment for agenda items, so we will go right into Mr. Renzi in athletics, please.
Renzo, operational cost, request approval of the athletic operational fees for the 2022-2023 school year as proposed. If there's no questions or objections, I'd like to have that placed on the agenda, please.
Hearing none, that will be placed on the agenda.
Request approval of the athletic ticket prices for the 2022-2023 school year as proposed. If no questions or objections, I'd like to have that placed on the agenda, please.
Hearing none, that will be placed on the agenda.
Request approval to award bids for fall sports supplies and equipment to the lowest responsible bidder, meeting specifications. No questions or objections, I'd like to have that placed on the agenda, please.
Hearing none, I'd like that placed on the agenda.
Request approval of the following supplemental contract for the 2022-2023 school year contingent upon receipt of the signed contract no later than 1 month after issuance, including the posting of the position if the contingency is not met, pending solicitor review, middle school assistant football coach. No questions or objections, I'd like to have that placed on the agenda, please.
Hearing none, that will be placed on the agenda.
Request approval to accept the resignation of middle school head girls basketball coach effective July 4th, 2022. No questions or objections, I'd like to have that placed on the agenda, please.
Hearing none, that will be placed on the agenda.
And letter F, request approval to accept the resignation of the middle school assistant boys soccer coach effective immediately. No questions or objections, I'd like to have that placed on the agenda, please.
Hearing none, that will be placed on the agenda.
Anything you want to add, Mr. Martucci? Mr. Evans? That's all I have, Mr. Anzala. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Renzi. Moving to buildings and grounds, Mr. Lake.
Thank you, Mr. Cancella. Request approval of the lease agreement between the Intermediate Unit 1 and the Conzo Area School District for its early intervention program. effective July the 1st, 2022, through June the 30th, 2023, at a cost of $17,100, at 12 equal installments of $900 and $525 per month, and 12 equal installments for the cleaning of the classrooms. No questions or objections, like that placed on the agenda.
Hearing none, that will be placed on the agenda.
Request approval to purchase a 2023 Ford F-450 7.3-liter box truck from Lincoln Ford at a cost of $63,607, O-Stars number 025-203, to be paid from the Capital Project Fund Bond Refunding Account. And no questions or objections, like that placed on the agenda.
Hearing none, that will be placed on the agenda.
Request approval to hire Crabtree, Roball and Associates to develop specifications for Hopkins Stadium project at an approximate fee of $7,500. No questions or objections, like that placed on the agenda.
Hearing none,
Quick question, Mr.
Question.
Lee. We're talking about the project out there. What all are we going to be doing? Is it just painting part of it, or is there some other things we're doing? The stadium. Does that just involve painting?
He'll be sandblasting all the old stuff off, be refurbishing that, and I think they include the 2 restrooms, but we're going to put it both under and on top, both sides, any structural steel they're going to do, and the railing.
any other questions? Hearing no objections, that will be placed on the agenda.
And the stadium project is request approval to solicit bids for the Falcon Stadium. That's what we're doing with the other one, but no questions or objections, we'll place that on there.
Hearing none, that will be placed on the agenda.
And request approval of the following addition to the substitute custodial list for the 2021-22 school year. With no questions or objections, like that placed on the agenda.
Hearing none, that will be placed on the agenda.
Mr. Kokenar, you have anything to add? Mr. Martucci? Mr. Kirsch? Did I get it all or did I forget anything?
8E, Kevin, you read 8E. Is it on yours?
All auction items, I'm sorry. Request approval to post unused school district items, equipment to the municipal site at no cost to the district online auction place for government agencies as presented to the board and approved to scrap any unsold items. No questions or objections, like that placed on the agenda?
Hearing none, that will be placed on the agenda.
And I believe that's all we have. Thank you. Another?
I think we have 8G.
8G, geez, the list. I got 2 lists here. All right, I'm sorry. Request approval of the following event and building use request, subject to adherence to the district's health and safety plan and all the applicable state and federal laws and orders, including any mandatory or recommended cancellations, rescheduling, or postponement, and on the condition that requesters provide an event or use-specific health and safety plan acceptable to the district. Any rescheduling or postponement shall be the sole discretion of the district and under such terms and conditions as may be set forth by the district. CAHS swim team is requesting use of the senior high school swimming pool for Learn to Swim Mondays and Wednesdays, July the 11th, 13th, 18th, 20th, 2022, from 6:30 to 7:30. No questions or objections, like that placed on the agenda.
Hearing none, that will be placed on the agenda.
Are we done now?
I believe so.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Moving to Carnegie Free Library, Mr. Mongeau.
Thank you. We have no motions on for this month, Mr. President. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Mongeau. Moving to Collinsville Area Career and Technical Center, Mr. Kokenar.
Hands on, 10A donation in accordance with policy number 702. Request approval to accept the donation of a 2003 Pontiac Bog for the auto mechanics technical program at an estimated amount of $2,024. No questions or objections. I'd like to have that placed on the agenda.
Hearing none, that will be placed on the agenda.
10B, donation in accordance with policy number 702, request approval to accept the donation of a 2012 Hyundai Accent for for the auto mechanics technical program at an estimated cost of $4,886. No questions or objections, I'd like to have that placed on the agenda.
Hearing none, that'll be placed on the agenda.
10C, auditor proposal, request approval of the reappointment of Mark C. Eternity as the auditor for the Columbusville Area Career and Technical Center for the years ending June 30th, 2022, at a cost of $7,500 as proposed. No questions or objections, I'd like to have that placed on the agenda.
Hearing none, that'll be placed on the agenda.
That's all I have. Mr. Panzella, Mr. Lake,
Nothing, thank you.
Mr. Gaines. That's all we have, Mr. Panzella, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kokenar. Moving to curriculum, Mr. Harsher.
Thank you, Mr. Panzella. Item 11A, MOU Pre-K SCNP. Request approval of the memorandum of understanding between the Private Industry Council, PIC, of Westmoreland Fayette Incorporated and the Collinsville Area School District to operate its Pre-K Counts program at Springfield Clifford M. Fritz Elementary School beginning August 1st, 2022 and ending on June 30th, 2023. PIC shall pay the district a sum of $9,000 per year in 9 monthly installments of $1,000 as proposed. No questions or objections, I'd like that placed on the agenda.
Hearing none, that'll be placed on the agenda.
Item 11B, Cal U Fall Student Teaching Placement. Request approval of Tanya Renhold of California University of Pennsylvania's student teaching placement at Dunbar Township Elementary School for the fall 2022. No questions or objections, I'd like that placed on the agenda.
Hearing none, that'll be placed on the agenda.
Item 11C, school plans. Request the approval of the ATSI non-Title I school plan for Collinsville Area School District and the Collinsville Area Collinsville Area High School and the Collinsville Area Middle School for the 2022-2023 school year. No questions or exceptions, no questions or exceptions like that added to the agenda.
Hearing none, that'll be added to the agenda.
11D, curriculum meeting. We had a meeting on June 13th, 2022 at 11 a.m. That's all I have, Mr. Renzi. Mr. Mongel. Dr. Coons. That's all we have, Mr. Panzella. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Harsher. Moving to cyber, Mr. Martre.
Thank you, Mr. Panzell. We have nothing at this time. Mr. Kokenar, do you have anything to add?
Nothing, thank you.
Mr. Mongiel? Mr. Rhodes? That's all we have, thank you. Our
Thank you.
meeting was June 8th at 8 a.m.
Thank you, Mr. Martre. Moving to federal programs, Mr. Mongel.
Thank you. Item 13A, a committee meeting was held June 14th at 9 a.m. and I'd like that placed on the agenda.
Hearing none, that'll be placed on the agenda.
Item
It is
13D,
on the agenda.
request the approval of the agreement with Discipline Associates, LLC, to provide a keynote speaker for a program entitled That One Kid to occur on August 24th, 2022. The Teacher in Service Day at a cost of $6,500 to be paid through the Title IV funds. And without any objections, I'd like that placed on the agenda.
Hearing none, that'll be placed on the agenda.
And item 13C, request the approval to contract with Power School to train the principals with Schoology on-site training at a cost of $3,500 to be paid from Title II funds. And with no objections, I'd like that placed on the agenda.
Hearing none, that'll be placed on the agenda.
And Mr. Martucci, do you have anything to add? Mr. Martre? That's all we have, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mongel. Moving to finance, Mr. Renzi.
Thank you, Mr. Panzella. We have a final budget presentation by Mrs. Routon at this time, please. If no questions, I'd like to have
Maybe after, huh?
tonight I'll give you the presentation for the final budget for the 22-23 school year. So this first slide is a breakdown of the 21-22 budget versus the 22-23 budget. I added two revenue lines showing you that the line item with revenues if there is no tax increase, as well as then a line with the revenues if you do vote for a tax increase. So without a tax increase, the budget of $84,801,207, which is a decrease from the 21-22 budget by 3.22%. Mainly that decrease is because of, we've spent Title, or ESSER 2 money, the majority of it within the 21-22, so when that drops off, the revenue we'll receive will be less in the 22-23 budget. And then with the increase, it's a difference of just about 500,000, so that'd be 85,302,194, which the percent change over the 21-22 budget would be 2.65. The expenditures, which is the line item which will be on the approval, you approve the expenditure of budget. That is proposed at $82,972,071, which is a 2.35% increase over 21-22 budget. Those increases are a result of cost of living increases to salaries, benefits, and other expenditures. Some of the higher benefits are PSERS, which increased 1%, which is from 34.94% to 35.26%. And we had an 8% increase in health benefits and 3% in dental and vision. So those are a lot of the changes that result in the effect of the increase in that budget. Then I once again wanted to show you a breakdown of the expenditures by category, with 60% of our budget in personnel, which would be your salaries and benefits added together. And then purchase services, which is transportation, tuition, and charter schools, makes up 24% of the budget. Debt, which is your debt service payments, of just above $9 million, or 11% of the budget. And then property, equipment, supplies, makes up 5% of the budget. So I showed you this slide before with the proposed budget. This shows where the district is with the adjusted index of 4.9. The maximum we would be allowed to raise taxes would be 0.6982, which would bring the tax rate to 14.9463. However, as a result of Finance Committee meeting, they asked that we propose just a 0.5 mil increase, resulting in a possible tax increase to 14.7481, generating just around 500, just under 500,000 with the 90% collection rate, which is about average for our district. I know while raising taxes might not be the popular thing to do, the next few slides I will explain why we feel, the Finance Committee and administration feel that this is needed, and why this year might be an easier year to raise it than others. So this slide shows the impact of the increase will have on local taxpayers. The impact is 50 cents on every $1,000 of assessments. So the average assessed value in the district is $60,000 of assessed value on property. The homeowner with this assessment would pay additional $30 more in taxes. So therefore, property tax assessed at $100,000 would pay $50 more in taxes, and so on throughout that chart. So with that being said, the 22-23 year, the property tax reduction revenue that the district will receive is $1,844,325. This is an increase of $358,286 from the previous year. This money is to offset the homestead farmstead property tax reduction. So it doesn't have it has a net effect in our budget. We receive the money from the state and we then put that out as a reduction of taxes. In the 21-22 school year, that amount that reduced taxes was $158.54. And the tax reduction for the 22-23 school year will be $200.60. If you do not raise taxes, the calculation of the, with the tax rate included, if there's an increase, it would be $200.49, which is an 11 cents difference. But, so this increase is $42 and some change. We're just under 42 if we increase taxes. So if a property is valued at $85,000, the difference you would pay in taxes would be $42.50, which would almost completely be offset by the additional homestead reduction. Therefore, not expecting your tax bill at all. Any property assessed under that would actually receive a reduced tax bill, and that effect would not be as great on those assessed above that. However, we do know that this is just around half of our tax bills because not everybody gets the property tax reduction. There's 9,352. We have roughly around 20 million tax bills. So those who don't get it would be people who have rental properties, businesses, or own more than one property. So if it's your primary residence and you own the home, your name's on the deed, you have the right to, of course, we have a list that has been approved, and those property owners would get this reduction. So this is the, I've shown you this spreadsheet before. This shows the 11-year average of all the Fayette County schools with their millage rates. On my screen it's pink, but up there it looks purple. So the purple would be all of, within every school district when they've raised taxes, and that light blue is when there was a decrease in the tax rates. So currently, well, the 21-22 school year, with our tax rate being 14.2481, we are well under all other 5 and districts. If we raised our taxes to 14.7481, we'd still be 0.8439 under Albert Gallatin, which is the second to lowest, and 3.40 under the average of the other 5 school districts. I wanted to go over this slide additionally, that we went over this with the preliminary budget. This slide was shown, so I did revise it. I inserted that into your books because on my previous one I had it separated with the unassigned fund balance and assigned fund balance, and I think that made it a little confusing, so I just wanted to do with total fund balance. So this shows a 5-year projection of where we'll be once the COVID grant money is no longer coming in to offset the expenditures. In 21-22, we had a $6.6 million surplus in the budget. This contained $13.8 million in additional COVID funding. Without this, we would have had a $6.8 million deficit budget. For the 22-23 year, we have budgeted $8.2 million in COVID funding in revenues, with only $1.1 million being spent on additional expenditures that would not have been in the regular budget. We're fortunate that we've received this money and we're able to build up our fund balance. We need to be responsible once this money is gone and not use the fund balance to offset future budgets. This projection shows it shows each year a 0.5 mil increase included in those revenue projections and a 2% increase in the expenditure budgets. I did not show any increase in state funding or federal funding in those because federal funding keeps getting cut and we haven't seen a large rise in state funding increases. So these were just projections based on history, based on the numbers we have. So if we don't increase taxes and we also, if we don't increase taxes and also receive increase in state funding, as well as making reductions to our expenditures, we're going to deplete the fund balance by the end of the 25-26 school year. So to sum up some of the changes between the preliminary budget and the final budget. Well, one thing, we have to pass the budget by June 30th, so hopefully the budget will pass at the Wednesday meeting on the 22nd, and if it, for some reason, it does not pass, we would have to have an emergency meeting scheduled before the 30th, or by the 30th. So this would be to sum up the changes. Over the past month, we've worked on staffing changes that occurred with the teachers' bid meeting. We were able to reduce staffing by 3 positions after the staff meeting. We also, in reviewing and going through all the staffing, we realized that a few personal student aides actually didn't roll into the budget that should have been. They were employed last year, they didn't roll into the budget correctly. So those offset each other. And then we also had some other small increases and decreases in various other areas of the budget. Additionally, there was an increase in the expenditure line item, that's the tuition to the CTC. That's budgeted in, that's $40,000, that was an additional to $40,000 in that. But overall, with all the changes between my proposed budget and the final budget, it's a net result of a decrease of $28,477 from between the two. Between the budget we passed in May and what I'm asking today. Okay, so this slide shows the career and technical budget with a 1.09% increase over the 21-22 budget. The CTC's budget is always a balanced budget. It's offset with the tuition charged to the school district to fund the CTC. With this projection, the district's cost for tuition within that budget is $3,112,453, with the remainder of $1,486 coming from state subsidies, grants, and local revenue, such as some small grants in culinary arts and cosmetology classes that do create some revenue for the CTC. So some changes between the proposed and final budget with the CTC is their total change is $67,511. This includes an increase in the salaries due to the result of the bid meeting, which also affects the benefits budget and also with Social Security and PSERS increasing. Those changes were, one, we had a retirement. I would have, in the proposed budget, budgeted a smaller salary because it would have been a new salary. However, with the bid meeting, you had a more senior staff member that bid on that. So that's where the changes. So it was just between, there was 2 positions that within the bid meeting, what I had budgeted, we had a more senior person. So that's what resulted in the higher salaries. These changes then, because the salaries were higher, then you also changed the revenue of Social Security and retirement subsidy, because those are calculations from the salaries. And then also we got our confirmation for the Carl Perkins grant, and it was higher by $7,257. So their total Carl Perkins is $101,957. So that was an increase from last year. And so the net effect, this is where I showed that the increase to the tuition for the school district was that $40,000. So that was the net effect of the changes within their budget. And that's everything I have as far as my presentation. Is there any questions or anything I can answer? No? Okay. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Mrs. Robinson. Excellent presentation. Item 14B, request approval of the budget transfers. No questions or objections, I'd like to place it on the agenda, please.
Hearing none, that will be placed on the agenda.
Request approval of the attached requisitions from May 21st through June 17th, 2022, and to authorize the district business office to process purchase orders and payments. No questions or objections, I'd like to have that placed on the agenda.
Hearing none, that will be placed on the agenda.
Request approval of the attached district credit card orders from May 21st, 2022 through June 17th, 2022, and to authorize district business office to process orders and payments. No questions or objections, I'd like to have it placed on the agenda, please.
Hearing none, that will be placed on the agenda.
Request approval to establish the 2022-2023 school year real estate millage rate of 14.7481 mils, or $1.47848 per $1,000 of assessed value. No questions or objections, I'd like to have it placed on the agenda, please.
Hearing none, that will be placed on the agenda.
Request approval to establish the 2022-2023 school year real estate millage rate at 14.2481 mils, or $1.4248 per $1,000 of assessed evaluation. No questions or objections, I'd like to have it placed on the agenda, please.
Hearing none, that will be placed on the agenda.
Request approval of the final general fund budget in the amount of X number of dollars for the 2022-2023 school year. No questions or objections, I'd like to have it placed on the agenda.
Hearing none, that will be placed on the agenda.
Request approval of the final Connellsville Area Career and Technical Center budget in the amount of X number of dollars for the 2022-2023 school year. No questions or objections, I'd like to have it placed on the agenda, please.
Hearing none, that will be placed on the agenda.
Request approval of the homestead and farmstead exclusion resolution as proposed. No questions or objections, I'd like to have it placed on the agenda, please.
Hearing none, that will be placed on the agenda.
Request approval to maintain the Act 511 taxes at the current rates as per attached resolution for the 2022-2023 school year. No questions or objections, I'd like to have it placed on the agenda, please.
Hearing none, that will be placed on the agenda.
Letter K, request approval of the workman's compensation insurance policy from UPMC Health Benefits for $159,187 with the broker of record, being Arthur J. Gallagher and Company, for the 2022-2023 school year. This includes coverage for the Connellsville Area School District and the Connellsville Area Career and Technical Center, which has a decrease of $15,564. No questions or objections, I'd like to have it placed on the agenda.
Hearing none, that will be placed on the agenda.
Request approval of the errors and omissions insurance participation agreement for the PSBA Insurance Trust School Leaders Legal Liability Risk Management Program for $33,066, property casualty for $167,790, auto for $13,837, and excess liability $11,290, with the broker of record being DeFuria, Mongeau and Associates for the fiscal year 2022-2023. This includes coverage for the Connellsville Area School District and the Connellsville Area Career and Technical Center. No questions or objections, I'd like to have it placed on the agenda.
Hearing none, that will be placed on the agenda.
Request approval of the following depositories for the Connellsville Area School District for the 2022-2023 school year. No questions or objections, I'd like to have it placed on, PNC Bank, Somerset Trust Company, PLGIT, and PSDLAF, and S&T Bank. No questions or objections, I'd like to have it placed on the agenda, please.
Hearing none, that will be placed on the agenda.
Request approval of the reappointment of Mark C. Turnley as auditor for the Connellsville Area School District for the year ending June 30th, 2022, at a cost of $15,500 as proposed, $15,500 last year. No questions or objections, I'd like to have it placed on the agenda.
Hearing none, that'll be placed on the agenda.
And we had a finance committee on June 15th at 10 a.m. Anything you want to add, Mr. Lake? Mr. Harrison?
Nothing, thank you.
Mrs. Routson? That's all I have, Mr. Penzel. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Renzo. Moving to food service, Mr. Kokenack.
Thank you, Mr. Manzella. 15A, request approval to award milk and bread bids for the 2022-2023 school year as follows. Dairy, bread, no questions or objections. I'd like to have that placed on the agenda.
Hearing none, that'll be placed on the agenda.
That's all I have, Mr. Manzella. Mr. Martire? That's all we have. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kokenack. Moving to personnel and review and liaison, Mr. Lake.
Thank you, Mr. Panzello. Request approval for a teacher to take child care leave for the absence for the 2022-23 school year. The questions or objections like that placed on the agenda.
Hearing none, that'll be placed on the agenda.
Request approval to increase the custodial summer help wage to $10 an hour. No questions or objections like that placed on the agenda.
Hearing none, that'll be placed on the agenda.
Request approval to accept the resignation of the Workforce Development Coordinator effective July the 4th, 2022, and post and advertise for the position. No questions or objections like that placed on the agenda.
Hearing none, that'll be placed on the agenda.
Request approval to accept retirement of a cafeteria worker effective June the 6th, 2022. No questions or objections like that placed on the agenda.
Hearing none, that'll be placed on the agenda.
And the following sabbatical leave is confirmed by the board for a teacher of 2022-2023 school year and a teacher the first semester 2022 and 2023 school year. No questions or objections like that placed on the agenda.
Hearing none, that'll be placed on the agenda.
Request approval to pay annual invoice to Frontline Technologies AESOP for absence and substitute management for the 2022-2023 school year in the amount of $14,747.06 as budgeted. Tech-related supplies and fees in 2022-2023 with a remaining balance of $8,253. And I so no questions or objections like that placed on the agenda.
Hearing none, that'll be placed on the agenda.
Request approval to purchase 300 programmable ID badges replacement stock from the ID wholesaler as a cost of $1,439.70 to be paid for from the 21-22 Human Resources General Supply budget with a remaining balance of $60.30. No questions or objections like that placed on the agenda.
Hearing none, that'll be placed on the agenda.
Request for approval for the permanent contract of the professional employees based on completion of 3 years satisfactory service in the Connersville Area School District. No questions or objections like that placed on the agenda.
Hearing none, that'll be placed on the agenda.
And request approval for a custodian to take an unpaid leave July the 25th to the 29th, 2022 to attend the PSEA Gettysburg Summer Leadership Development Conference at no cost to the district. No questions or objections like that placed on the agenda.
Hearing none, that'll be placed on the agenda.
Request approval to appoint as curriculum instructor and federal program secretary effective June the 27th, 2022 in accordance with the fringe benefits and compensation agreement for the Connersville Area Education Support Personnel. No questions or objections like that placed on the agenda.
Hearing none, that'll be placed on the agenda.
Request approval to hire as a library BCIT teacher effective August 23rd, 2022. No questions or objections like that placed on the agenda.
Hearing none, that'll be placed on the agenda.
And request approval to hire a science teacher effective August 23rd, 2022. No questions or objections like that placed on the agenda.
Hearing none, that'll be placed on the agenda.
Request approval to make the following administrative/principal transfers and reassignments for the 2022-2023 academic year and until for that transfer and/or reassignment. No questions or objections like that placed on the agenda.
Hearing none, that'll be placed on the agenda.
Did I get them all? Tell me now. If not, Mr. Renzi, you have anything to add? Mr. Harshman?
Nothing, thank you.
Mrs. Coconut? Dr. Bradley?
Nothing, thank you, please.
That's all we have, Mr. Manzella. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lake. Moving to policy and legislative, Mr. Martre.
Thank you, Mr. Panzel. We have a couple of policy revisions. Request approval of the first reading of the following revised policies: Policy 808, food services, and Policy 707, use of school facilities. No questions or objections, I'd like to have it placed on the agenda.
Hearing none, that will be placed on the agenda.
Mr. Mongelli, anything else? Mr. Harshman?
Nothing, thank you.
Dr. Bradley?
Nothing, thank you.
That's all we have.
Thank you, Mr. Martre. Moving to safety and security, Mr. Martucci. Thank you, Mr. Martucci. Staying with you with special education, please. Hearing none, that will be placed on the agenda. Thank you once again, Mr. Martucci. Moving to student services, Mr. Harshman.
Thank you, Mr. Panzella. Item 20A, driver's educational vehicle. Request approval of the 2022 driver education vehicle lease agreement between the Connellsville Area School District and TA Nelson Bus Lines at a cost of $700 per month, effective June 23rd through August 23rd, 2022. No questions or objections, I'd like to have placed on the agenda.
Hearing none, that will be placed on the agenda.
Item 20B, request approval to accept the resignation of Skills USA Advisor for the CPC effective July 4th, 2022. No questions or objections, I'd like to have placed on the agenda.
Hearing none, that will be placed on the agenda.
Item 20C, supplemental resignation. Request approval to accept the resignation of middle school technology liaison effective 2022-2023 school year. No questions or objections, I'd like that placed on the agenda.
Hearing none, that will be placed on the agenda.
20D, supplemental resignation. Request approval to accept the resignation of HOSA advisor effective immediately. No questions or objections, I'd like that placed on the agenda.
Hearing none, that will be placed on the agenda.
That is all I have, Mr. Mongeau. Mr. D'Amico. That's all we have, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Harshman. Sticking with you with technology, please.
Item 21A, technology employment policy. Request approval of the technology employee policy for the 2022-2023 school year as proposed. No questions or objections, I'd like that placed on the agenda.
Hearing none, that will be placed on the agenda.
That's all I have, Mr. Martucci. Mr. Martre. Mr. Ghost. That's all we have, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Harshman. Moving to transportation, Mr. Kokenar.
Thank you, Mr. Panzella. We have nothing. Mr. Lake? Mr. Renzi? Mr. Evans? That's all we have, Mr. Panzella. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kokenar. Moving on to the President's report. Request approval to submit the Section 520.1 emergency instructional time schedule to the Pennsylvania Department of Education for the 2022-2023 school year. No objections, we'll add that to the agenda. And next we will move into public comment. We have nothing for non-agenda items. Assistant to the superintendent, do you have anything? Dr. Bradley?
I just wanted to thank Mrs. Rollinson and her team for the fine-tuning of the budget presentation. It's a lot of hours that they put in to put a fine point on the information for the board to make the decision. And I look forward to the board making the budget decisions that are necessary. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Bradley. Motion to
Mr.
adjourn.
Panzella, I have one other thing too, and I'll bring this up Wednesday. I also, and not speaking for the board, but I think the board did a great job. I think that the finance, administrators, and the few meetings we've been having, and the assistants and people, everybody works up at that main office. Seems like everybody's really coming together and doing a great job. I mean, I think some of this board did great service, and some of the people they hired up there, and I think they did a good job. That's all I have. Thank you.
I agree. Thank you, Mr. Lee. Working well and doing a good job. I hear a lot of good things. Thanks again. Anybody else have anything? That's it. Motion adjourned. Guess that's it.